While I don't expect most of you to know anything about this game, much less click on this video, Project Silverfish is one of the most incredible indie games I've ever played. And I'm not kidding. I don't mean to over-exaggerate. This game isn't for everybody. But if you like Stalker or System Shock or other immersive sim type games, then pick this one up. Trust me, you'll love it. So while I'd like to say that I played through the entire campaign of Project Silverfish, that's not entirely true. There is no campaign. It took me around 20 hours to explore pretty much everything the game had to offer. That said, I'm sure there's tons of secrets and tons of loot that I didn't obtain. The fact is, this game looks deceptively simple, but there is just so much going on under the hood. To try and keep this review from being too daunting for me, I'm gonna go through each of the different mechanics of the game step by step. So first of all, when you start up the game, you get to select a class and a faction. This is detrimental to your playthrough because there's a bunch of pre-made classes that will start with really good gear that takes a long time to find within the game. But you can also make a custom class, which allows you to take more perks for your character, but you don't get that good gear. The thing is, you can't just choose 100% positive passives. You have to take a deficit. You have to keep your character in balance. So the more positive effects you have, the more negative effects you have. In the case of my character, I chose a stealthy boy that moved faster while crouching, but I would also take extra damage and drown. But I also chose the neutral faction because it was recommended to me. Because when you get in the game, there's like 4 or 5 different factions. You'll end up having different standing with them, and if you have a high enough standing, you can do missions with them and they won't shoot you on sight. Problem is, some of these factions kind of start in the negative already, and when you're coming to terms with the game, it's very difficult to discern who your enemies are. Like anyone who wears red armor is rebels, yellow is insurrection, blue is military, stuff like that. But the thing is, these colors are very muted in-game, so it can take a while to be able to figure out who's who at a glance. The reason this is important is because inevitably you're gonna have to shoot somebody. And for everyone you kill that's part of a faction, you lose reputation with that faction. But if you can somehow manage to get a full set of their armor, you can actually disguise yourself. This will allow you to infiltrate their bases, not only allowing you to sneak in and get some loot, but some missions might actually have you going super deep into their compounds. This game has incredible pacing in terms of its progression, because if you kill an enemy, you can take their gun, but you can't take their armor, meaning that you have to find the armor organically by exploring. And exploring is the one thing that makes this game god tier. These developers understand how to make an interesting world on a molecular level. Like take this warehouse at the beginning of the game, for example. If you try to go upstairs, the door is locked. You can either use a lockpick to pick the lock open, or climb up the ladder and go in through the window up top to land on this board and get in the room from the other side. That attention to detail applies to everywhere. I also have to praise the sound design because it does a lot of heavy lifting to make you feel immersed in this world. But the main thing that I think will be off-putting to a lot of people is the difficulty. This game is so hard and so unforgiving, it literally does not give a crap. Now, by default, when you die, you can take a couple items with you, respawn back at base, and leave a death pile at the location you died. What this does is makes you really respect your enemy. Not when they like just cheap shot you, but in a way it makes the game so much more tense and way scarier than it deserves to be. But if that sounds a little bit too harsh for you, there is another option. You can set it so that the game automatically saves when you enter a new zone, and if you die at any time in that zone, it'll just reload your last save. This does cut down on travel time, but it doesn't mean that death is meaningless. Because if you're exploring a vault and you get a bunch of treasure and knickknacks, only to die right at the end as you're leaving, well, it's gonna load your file and you just lost all the loot. Now you gotta go through it again. And because it reloaded the area, all of the monsters might change, and the loot might change as well. I'll talk a bit more about that later. This might be frustrating for some people, but again, it added a tension that I haven't felt in more modern video games. Yes, part of me would love to have like a quick save and quick load option, but the only reason I would want that is so that I could experiment. The side effect would be that I would just be save scumming all the time. I'd still recommend that you take the same difficulty I did your first time through, because there's parts of this game that just completely sucker punch you. In particular, there's a couple quests where you gotta hunt down specific enemies, and they'll just one-shot you, like straight up. There's also mutants and demons. There was this one phantom that I found where as it got closer to me, my vision went dark. I only fought it once. There's also a lot of quality of life stuff. Like being over encumbered just lowers your movement speed, and the game will literally tell you what your movement speed is based on how much weight you're carrying. There's also food in the game, but it's not something that you have to worry about. All it does is boost your regen speed. Now, another thing that I do want to mention is that as of right now, the game doesn't really have a campaign. Sure, there's a couple different main missions that you can do, but usually they just end up giving you money. And unfortunately, the game's not really balanced when it comes to money. At first, you're gonna be pretty starved for resources, but by the mid to end game, I was just stockpiled. I honestly wish there was more things that I could spend my money on in this game. Please, devs, add more gun variations. Like, give me a silenced rifle. I couldn't find one. Granted, it's probably in the game, I just never got lucky enough. Because that's the thing that actually keeps this game fresh. Every time you end up going into an area, it randomly chooses like a bunch of enemies, anomalies, and whatever else. The world is static, but everything within the world is not. You can even choose to have respawning loot, meaning that revisiting an area is not pointless. Lastly, I will say that if you do plan on picking this one up, don't look up any videos online. This unfortunately is one of those games that can be completely obliterated by knowing where the good items are. And for everything that's random generated in the game, unfortunately, passwords to doors are not. Meaning if you know where the good stuff is and you got the passwords to prove it, well, you can just get it right away. I will also warn that this game is in early access. In particular, some of the late game areas that I was exploring felt pretty empty and incomplete. I'll also say that if you get frustrated at video games and don't have patience, then you probably won't like this, because there is no hand-holding here. You might get a quest to find a guy to go to his last known location to find a letter that explains where he's hiding out. But the quests in the game aren't always so simple. Thankfully, the rewards are usually just money, so you don't have to do them. I'm just stating how much I appreciate this game's world building. As for my recommendation, for me personally, it's 100% yes. This is a sleeper hit and an indie game that I would have never even heard about if the devs didn't reach out to me. I am so glad they did, because this is genuinely one of the best indie games I've ever played. Or at least it is within its own specific genre, and it's only going to get better from here. I'm not gonna say the game's perfect. It is pretty clunky sometimes. There's also a lot of walking and backtracking, especially when you get further on in the game. Keeping in mind, I wasn't playing on extraction mode, which would have made it significantly worse. But the fact still remains that the ambition of this title far outweigh the negatives. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna start a new character as a veteran who feels guilty when killing living things, and the only cure for your mental fatigue is whiskey.